We have seen pornographic statistics in part 3. But before we go further, let me take you a little more in detail. Let's discuss about prostitution. Prostitution statistics. This demand unfortunately spurs the $58 billion industry of sex trafficking. Studies reveal 1 in 10 men in the world have purchased a prostitute. Even former governor of New York, Eliot Spitzer, has paid escorts $5,550 an hour. The murder rate for an American prostitute is 204 for every 100,000. If we compare with the most dangerous jobs in America, as a fisherman, it is 129 out of 100,000. Same as aircraft pilot, the ratio is 74 out of 100,000. Even in logger it is 116 out of 100,000. Because of prostitution, unfortunately sex trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. Prostitution is a crime not against one person, but against the whole of society. It is a violation of a marital contract. 50% of all first-time marriages in the USA result in divorce within 2 years, and the main reason for divorce are the adultery of one of the partners. Prostitution is an extreme form of gender discrimination. But most arguments in favor of legalization are based on trying to distinguish between free and forced prostitution, and even in trafficking. Considering the extreme conditions of exploitation in the sex industry, those distinctions are nothing but abstractions that make for good academic debates. They are, however, meaningless to women under the control of pimps or traffickers. These arguments are a good way to deceive people from reality. But in reality, women's bodies and emotions must belong to them alone. They must not be traded or sold. Legalization of prostitution is just like a signature on a contract, to be raped. But unfortunately, as I said, we are living in the age of Antichrist, so his followers are now successful to legalize the prostitution in many countries. Let's have a look. In Israel, prostitution is legal and widespread. In Panama, prostitution is legal. Prostitutes required to register and carry identification cards. However, the majority of prostitutes were not registered. In Greece, prostitution is legal at the age of 18. Persons engaged in prostitution must register at the local prefecture and carry a medical card that is updated every 2 weeks. In Switzerland, prostitution is legal. Prostitution is legal for persons over the age of 18, and it is practiced openly in major cities and tourist resorts. In Lebanon, prostitution is legal. It requires brothels be licensed. In Turkey, prostitution is legal. Women need to be registered and acquire an ID card stating the dates of their health checks. In Peru, prostitution is legal. It is legal for women over 18 years of age, and they register with municipal authorities. In Malawi, prostitution is legal. The legal prevalent around hotels and bars, even in urban and tourist areas. In Germany, prostitution is legal, although communities have the authority to exclude it from specified areas, such as residential neighborhoods. In Bangladesh, female prostitution was legal. Male prostitution was illegal. If you remember that in Tuesday, 14th of March, 2000, Bangladesh High Court has ruled that prostitution is a livelihood, and it is not illegal. In Canada, prostitution is legal. Prostitution exists throughout the country, particularly in major urban centers. In Netherlands, prostitution is legal. It is legal for persons age 18 or older, who engage in the practice voluntarily. In Macau, prostitution is legal. The Tsar had a large sex trade, including brothels. In Hungary, prostitution is legal, but persons engaged in prostitution could only work legally in certain locations, which are away from schools and churches. There are many other areas where prostitution is legal. For example, in Queensland, New South Wales, Namibia, Argentina, Latvia, Mali, Nicaragua, Honduras, Paraguay, Nicaragua, Madagascar and Ethiopia. But in those countries where it is not yet legal, they are also on a way to legalize it. For example, in India, prostitution is not illegal, but it is restricted, same as in Iceland, Malaysia, Nepal, Norway and Sweden. The Philippines is a good Asian example. Technically prostitution is illegal, but when it had United States military bases, there was such a huge demand by United States military men for sex, and it flourished. But the strange thing is that prostitution is illegal in the United States. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, has said in many places that adultery is one of the 3 major sins. However, the most interesting story is that of a young man who went to the Prophet, peace and blessing. This man asked for permission to fornicate, because he could not control himself. The Prophet dealt with him with reasoning and asked him if he would approve of someone else having illegal sex with his mother, sister, daughter, or wife. Each time the man said no. Then the Prophet replied that the woman with whom you plan to have sex is also somebody's mother, sister, daughter, or wife. The man understood and repented. The Prophet prayed for his forgiveness. To understand more how big this fitna is,
former head of the FBI, Los Angeles, California, retired in 1979, and much to my surprise, my witnesses, my 19 new witnesses, including Alina Stokely, started calling me and saying, hey Ted, the FBI has interviewed me, they're trying to get me to recant. And I'm saying to myself, that isn't the responsibility of the FBI. The FBI is supposed to gather information, not destroy it. And that was my first clue that we had a serious problem in that case. And then I continued on, and I had a number of other cases that I handled privately. And in each instance, I noticed evidence was lost, destroyed, stolen. I noticed that there were strong indications of corruption. So I asked myself, now what's going on here? And over the years, I started gathering material until about 2 years ago. Up until about 2 years ago, I kept saying there's a loose-knit network operating in this country involving drugs, pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption, etc., etc. 2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. And you know how the news media comes after us when we use the word C, conspiracy, that C word. Well, they can come after me all they like, because I guarantee you right here and now we do have a conspiracy, and I'm going to prove it to you here today. Now, one of the things that convinced me and really got me started in this regard, by the way, this conspiracy involves pornography, drugs, corruption, involves pedophilia, involves organized child kidnapping rings, the finders out of Washington, D.C., CIA cover, covert operation, involved in the international trafficking of children, terrorism, bank accounts, and it goes on and on. By the way, I strongly urge you to go to my booth after this lecture and get my research, my book and my research on missing children. We're going to go into that a little bit in the lecture. But my missing children lecture documents that the finders, an organization in Washington, D.C., this CIA front. It's a covert operation. They're involved in international trafficking of children. And I have a U.S. Customs report, official U.S. Customs report, in my book on the missing children. So I urge you to get it. It's only...
Nancy Dunn was raised in what looked like the typical American family.
I lived in California. My father worked for the aerospace industry. My mother worked for a doctor. And so, you know, on the outside everything looked just normal, but nobody really knew what was going on behind closed doors. My father was actually a Satanist high priest, so he did all kinds of evil things. He sexually assaulted me. He took me to satanic rituals. My father actually used me as a baby breeder, which means I was impregnated to carry a child so that the Satanists would have a baby to sacrifice to the devil in their satanic rituals. As soon as I was able to have a baby, I was pregnant.
The abuse in Nancy's home continued throughout her adolescence. Her babies were delivered by midwives, and there was no record of their births. By her late teens, Nancy knew she had lost 10 children to satanic sacrifice.
We will have a detailed look on pornographic statistics in Part 4.